My name's Marcus, I'm 32, and up until a few months ago, I was the guy in the family everyone conveniently forgot until it was time to pull out a wallet. You know the type. Quiet, single, dependable. I've got a good job in tech. No kids, no big expenses, at least that's how they see me. My family always loved to call me the stable one, which I think was their polite way of saying, the one we can take advantage of without pushback. And for the most part, they weren't wrong. I never really made a fuss about things. Not when my sister Julia forgot to pay me back for the down payment I covered on her first apartment. Not when my cousin Tyler stayed with me for 3 months until he got back on his feet and left without saying goodbye or leaving rent. Not even when my parents asked me to co-sign their second mortgage after Dad's business went belly up. I just smiled, nodded, and did it. That's kind of been my role, the background character holding the scene together, while the main cast gets to live their big, messy lives. But this time was different. It started with the family reunion. We do one every summer, usually rotating between whoever has the space to host it. But since I bought a pretty decent house a couple years ago, one with a pool and a big yard, everyone decided it should be at my place. That first year, I went all out. Catered barbecue, games for the kids, even rented a bounce house. No one offered to pitch in, but I brushed it off. That's what family's for, I told myself. Last year, I did it again. Fewer thank yous that time. A few more comments about the selection of drinks and how come there's no vegan options. Still, I didn't say a word. This year, I suggested we try something different. Rent out a house in the mountains for a weekend. Make it a little getaway. My treat. Everyone jumped at the idea. My mom even called to say how proud she was that I was finally stepping up to bring the family together. That sentence stuck with me for a while. As if hosting for 2 years straight and bankrolling Christmas dinner didn't already qualify as stepping up. But I let it slide. I found a great place through a friend's contact, a private cabin-style home on a lake, 6 bedrooms, game room, kayaks, fire pit, the works. It wasn't cheap, but again, this was me we're talking about. The stable one. I booked it, sent out invites, created a shared Google Doc with directions, room assignments, dietary needs, the whole 9 yards. I was actually excited. I thought maybe this year would be different. It wasn't. The reunion was set for the second weekend of June. I left work early that Friday, picked up a bunch of groceries and snacks, and made the 3-hour drive out. I even stopped to get my mom her favorite brand of decaf tea, because last year she complained the store brand gave her headaches. I remember pulling up to the house, sunlight filtering through the trees, car loaded with supplies, phone buzzing with silence. That should have been my first clue. I unloaded the car. Waited. Texted the group chat. Hey, just got here. The place looks amazing. Can't wait for y'all to see it. No response. An hour went by. Then another. I figured maybe they were just running late. It wouldn't be the first time. I started the grill, grabbed a drink, put on music, trying to keep the vibe light. But something felt off. Eventually, I called my mom. She picked up on the third ring, sounding cheery. Oh, honey, she said, laughing like I just told a joke. You actually went? I blinked. What do you mean? I've been here 2 hours. Where is everybody? We had it yesterday, she said, still with that tone, like I was the punchline. Everyone agreed it'd be better that way. You know how you get sometimes. A little stiff. You make people uncomfortable. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, wind rustling the trees around me, smoke curling from the abandoned grill. You had changed the date? And didn't tell me. We figured it was easier this way, she said. Less awkwardness. No hard feelings, right? You always say you prefer peace and quiet. I don't remember what I said after that. I think I hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just stood there, staring at the lake, feeling like the biggest fool in the world. Then I turned off the grill, packed the car back up, and drove home in silence. I didn't even unpack the groceries. Just shoved them in the fridge and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up to 67 missed calls. My phone was buzzing so much it knocked itself off the nightstand. There were texts from my dad, Julia, Tyler, even people I hadn't heard from in months. It turns out, when I left the reunion house early, when I said nothing, I also stopped paying their mortgage. Because that second mortgage I co-signed for? I'd been the one quietly covering the payments for almost 2 years. My parents were supposed to take over after 6 months, but they hit a rough patch and never picked it back up. And I didn't want their house foreclosed, so I just handled it. Until now. See, the payment was due that same weekend. I'd scheduled it manually each month, but this time, I didn't log in. I didn't pay. I didn't call the bank. I just didn't do anything. And now they were calling me like the house was on fire. I sat in bed, staring at the screen, watching messages pile in. Marcus, please call us. This isn't funny. We didn't mean to hurt your feelings. Can we just talk? My favorite was from Julia. You're being really immature right now. Grow up. I put the phone down, got up, made coffee, sat on the patio and listened to the birds. It was the quietest morning I'd had in years. And as the breeze stirred the wind chimes, I realized something. Maybe being the stable one wasn't the compliment they thought it was. Maybe it was just the name they gave the family doormat. And for once, I didn't feel like laying down and taking it. But that wasn't the end. Not by a long shot. What they didn't realize, what they never even thought to ask, was that I hadn't just been paying their mortgage. I'd also taken over the home insurance, the property taxes, and, believe it or not, I was the one who'd been quietly handling the HOA disputes. See, after Dad's construction business failed, he got a little reckless with the mailbox. Didn't like that it had to be a uniform style. Ended up building a custom iron one with flames on it. Literal flames. HOA wasn't impressed. Fined him twice. Threatened legal action. Guess who stepped in with a lawyer friend to make it go away? They never knew, because I never said anything. I just kept handling the things they let slide. Until I didn't. So when I didn't make the mortgage payment, it triggered more than a misbill. It triggered a domino effect. I got a call from the bank that Monday. Polite, professional. Mr. Thorne, just checking in. Will the payment be submitted today? I paused, holding the phone to my ear. No, I said. Not this time. A silence followed, but the woman didn't argue. Understood. Please be aware that without payment, the account may enter default by the 15th. I thanked her, ended the call, and turned off my phone for the rest of the day. Meanwhile, back in my family's group chat, which I hadn't opened since the reunion, things were apparently unraveling. A friend of mine, who was still in the chat because she once helped organize Christmas gifts for all the nieces and nephews, and then somehow just never got removed, started sending me screenshots. Julia texted, "He's literally letting MOM and Dad go into foreclosure." Tyler texted, "Why would he do that? Just because we changed the reunion date." Uncle Darren texted, "I told y'all he was weird." Then Mom finally chimed in, and I'll never forget this part. Mom texted, "I didn't raise Marcus to be spiteful. He's always been sensitive. This is just him throwing a tantrum. He'll come around." A tantrum. That's what they called it. After everything I'd done. After covering their bills, smoothing over their drama, silently carrying their obligations for years, I finally stopped, and now I was throwing a tantrum? I didn't reply. I just sat with it. Thought about how easy it had been to let them shape the narrative for so long. The quiet one, the sensitive one, the helpful son. Funny how those labels only stick when you stay quiet. But I was done being quiet. The next day, I had a meeting with my financial advisor. Nothing major, just routine check-ins. I've been saving for a second property, something modest in the city, maybe a rental. But when she asked if I still wanted to move forward with that plan, I hesitated. And then I said, "Actually, I think I want to liquidate the joint account." She looked up from her notes. "The one you're using for the Thorne property?" "Yeah, that one." That joint account had been set up when I co-signed the mortgage, mostly to make things easier for me to pay things on their behalf. I never gave them direct access. But now, I was done babysitting. I pulled out the remaining funds. Not out of pettiness. Out of principle. Because for once, I wanted my decisions to benefit me, not them. It wasn't long before the email started. My dad sent a long one. Maybe the first one I'd ever received from him that didn't contain a "forward this to 10 people or you'll have bad luck" chain. It was full of guilt-drenched phrases like "we never meant to push you away," and "you know how your mother gets and family doesn't keep score." And that last one? That hit me sideways. Because I hadn't kept score. Not when Julia needed help with tuition and came crying to me at 2 a.m. Not when Tyler got arrested for unpaid parking tickets and needed just a couple hundred to avoid jail. Not when Mom called crying because the roof was leaking and Dad was pretending it wasn't. I didn't keep score. I just kept giving. But now that I stopped, suddenly everyone had a running tally of what they thought I owed them. A week passed. Then another. The bank began foreclosure proceedings. Julia tried calling. I didn't answer. Tyler emailed. I left it unread. Dad sent a letter by mail. I didn't open it. And then came the real kicker. I was sitting in a coffee shop one morning, just enjoying a cinnamon scone, earbuds in, pretending I wasn't watching the world around me, when I got a text from my Aunt Carol. She wasn't usually in the mess. One of the only decent ones in the family. She used to sneak me ginger cookies at Christmas when Mom said I didn't need more sugar. Her text just said, "You might want to check Facebook." So I did. My mother had posted a public status. It read, "Imagine raising a child, loving him, supporting him, only to have him turn his back when you need him most. Some people only care when they're getting praised for it." Guess that says everything. Thousands of likes. Dozens of comments. Neighbors. Church friends. Even her old college roommate chiming in. I sat there, watching it scroll, watching people offer sympathy for the woman who laughed at me over the phone while I stood alone at a reunion I paid for. And that's when something in me shifted. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was done. And that meant things were going to change permanently. Because they thought losing the house was bad. They had no idea what was coming next. I didn't reply to my mom's post. I didn't comment, or like, or send a message. I didn't try to explain my side or argue with strangers who suddenly had an opinion about the son who turned his back on his family. Instead, I just screenshotted it, filed it away in a folder on my desktop titled Closure, and went on with my day. But in the back of my mind, a plan had already started to form. Because here's something they'd all forgotten, or maybe just never bothered to learn. When I co-signed the mortgage, I became a partial owner of the property. It wasn't just a formality. I had skin in the game. My name was on the deed. Legally, it was just as much my house as it was theirs. I'd let them live there. I'd paid their bills. I'd even covered the renovations when they wanted to redo the kitchen to boost resale value someday. But they never saw it that way. To them, I was the safety net, the backup plan, the invisible scaffolding holding up their crumbling tower. And now that I'd stepped back, they were realizing just how much of the structure depended on me. Foreclosure doesn't happen overnight. There's a process, notices, grace periods, negotiations. But I wasn't interested in dragging it out. I didn't want to destroy their lives. I just wanted my piece of it back. So I contacted a lawyer, explained the situation, asked what options I had for withdrawing my ownership interest in the property. She listened carefully, then leaned back and said something I'll never forget. "Well," she said, "you've already been more generous than most. But if you really want to send a message, you could file for partition." I raised an eyebrow. Partition. It's a legal action that forces the sale of a jointly owned property. Since you're on the deed and they can't afford to buy you out, you can petition the court to force them to sell. You'll get your share. They'll have to move. It was cold, clinical, brutal, and it was exactly what I needed. Because I wasn't doing this out of spite. I was doing it to reclaim something I hadn't realized I'd lost. Control. So I filed. 3 days after the paperwork was submitted, I finally responded to the family group chat. I hadn't opened it in weeks. The last message before mine was from Julia. "Can someone please get Marcus to grow up already?" I didn't reply to her. I sent a single message. "The mortgage isn't your biggest problem. Check your mail." That was it. No signature. No explanation. Just a warning. It took less than 24 hours for the explosion. My phone lit up like it had on the morning after the reunion. Missed calls. Voicemails. Even my dad, who hadn't called me directly in over a year, left a message. "Marcus, please. This is going too far. There has to be another way." Julia sent a long email titled, "You're literally tearing this family apart." Tyler called me 7 times in a row, then texted, "I'll pay you back what I owe. Just don't do this to Mom and Dad." And Mom? She posted another status. This one not quite as vague. "Some people hide behind contracts and courts when they don't have the courage to face their own family. But no amount of legal action will undo the damage you've done, Marcus. I hope you sleep well in your big empty house." Again, I screenshotted it, filed it away. The court date came. They showed up, looking tired, angry, and a little confused. My lawyer was cool and collected. The judge listened, reviewed the documents, and ruled in my favor. The house would be sold. I'd get my share. They had 90 days to vacate. And that was when the real silence started. Not the passive-aggressive kind. Not the cold-shoulder silence I'd grown up with when I disappointed them by not laughing at one of Dad's jokes or forgetting to bring deviled eggs to Thanksgiving. This was deeper, emptier. For the first time in my life, they had nothing left to say to me. I didn't go on a victory tour. I didn't brag. I didn't celebrate. I just breathed. It's a strange thing, realizing that the people who raised you only liked you when you were useful. It shakes your foundation, makes you question everything, your memories, your decisions, your worth. But it also forces you to look inward, to rebuild, to define yourself by something other than obligation. In the weeks that followed, I started saying no more. No to being the emergency contact for people who never checked in unless they needed something. No to funding holidays where I was treated like the unwanted guest who just so happened to pay the bills. No to guilt-trip birthday parties and passive-aggressive family dinners and whispered gossip about how I'd changed. Because I had changed. Or maybe I just stopped pretending. And then, right when things had started to settle, right when I was finally learning how to live for myself instead of everyone else, I got a knock on the door. It was early evening, sun just starting to dip behind the trees. I opened the door, and there stood my mother, tired, dressed in one of her old cardigans, holding a manila envelope. She looked at me like I was a stranger, like she didn't quite recognize me. "Can we talk?" she asked softly. I stood there for a long moment, hand resting on the door, feeling the weight of everything between us. The long years of being the good son, the easy one, the reliable one. The years of birthday parties spent on the sidelines, holidays paid for and barely acknowledged, reunions that felt more like obligations than celebrations. All of it, sitting heavy between us in the space of a few silent seconds. Then I finally stepped back and held the door open. Not because I wanted her to come in, but because I wanted to hear it. The excuse, the apology, or whatever version of the truth she had come to offer. She moved slowly, like she wasn't sure she was welcome. She set the manila envelope down on the entryway table like it might burn her fingers. I didn't offer coffee. I didn't ask her to sit. I just leaned against the wall, arms crossed, and waited. Mom wrung her hands together, a nervous tick I remembered from when I was little, and she was about to scold me for something small. Forgetting my lunch, tracking mud into the kitchen, not smiling enough in family photos. "I didn't come here to fight," she said finally. I stayed silent. She paused, searching for the right words. "We didn't realize how much we leaned on you." I arched an eyebrow, but said nothing. "We thought you didn't mind," she added quickly, like rushing through the words would somehow soften them. "You never complained. You always helped. We thought you liked being needed." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so painfully backwards. I liked being part of the family. I liked feeling valued. But being needed? Being used? That wasn't love. That was survival. "You didn't just lean on me," I said, voice low. "You stood on me. And when I couldn't carry it anymore, you acted like I was the problem." Her face crumpled a little. She looked smaller than I remembered. "We were wrong," she whispered. I was wrong. For a second, just a second, I almost let that soften me. I almost forgot the years of being treated like an ATM with a pulse. The wedding gifts they never thanked me for. The graduation parties I wasn't invited to. The vacations they bragged about in front of me, knowing full well I wasn't included, but expected to contribute. Almost. "What's in the envelope?" I asked instead. Mom swallowed. "The house sold." She slid it toward me. Inside was a check, my portion of the sale, minus the fees and taxes. It was a large sum. Enough for a down payment on another house, or a year's worth of travel, or the kind of investment that could quietly double if handled right. I picked it up, weighed it in my hands. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't closure. It was just money. "Thank you," I said simply, and slid the envelope into a drawer. She waited, hoping, maybe, that would be the olive branch. That we could pretend nothing happened. That years of being overlooked and used could be scrubbed away with a few sad eyes and a cashier's check. But I wasn't playing that game anymore. "Mom," I said quietly, "you're not a villain. I know that. You're not evil. You didn't wake up every morning thinking, 'How can I hurt Marcus today?'" She blinked, surprised, maybe even relieved. But good people can still do bad things when they're careless, when they're selfish, when they assume someone else will always be there to clean up the mess. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. "And you can apologize," I continued, "and I can accept it. I do. I believe you're sorry." A tear slipped down her cheek. I didn't rush to wipe it away. "But that doesn't mean things go back to how they were." She flinched like I'd struck her. And in a way, maybe I had. Because for people like my mother, the worst thing you can do isn't yell, or cut them off, or even expose them. The worst thing you can do is take away access. Take away the guarantee that you'll always be there no matter how badly they treat you. "I love you," I said, and I meant it. "But I'm not coming back to the way things were. I'm not the family ATM anymore. I'm not the easy one. I'm just me, and you're going to have to decide if that's enough." She nodded, slowly, painfully, like each movement hurt. Okay, she whispered. Okay. We stood there a little longer, awkward and broken and honest in a way we'd never been before. Then she turned and left without another word. When the door clicked shut behind her, I didn't collapse into tears. I didn't second-guess myself. I didn't even feel hollow. I just felt free. The months that followed were quieter than any I could remember. No frantic holiday calls asking me to cover catering deposits. No late-night emergencies about bounced checks. No guilt-tripped birthday invitations attached to Venmo requests. I bought a new place, smaller, simpler. A little townhouse closer to the city, with a cozy balcony and a coffee shop down the block where the barista already knew my order by the third visit. I started traveling a bit. Nothing extravagant. Weekend trips, exploring nearby cities, hiking trails I'd put off for years. I learned how to sit with myself without feeling like I needed to be needed to have value. And slowly, something even stranger happened. The friends I neglected while juggling family crises reached out. We grabbed drinks. We laughed. Some even apologized for fading away. They hadn't known how much of my life was spent putting out fires that weren't mine. I didn't rebuild the bridge to my family, but I left the door unlocked. Every so often, a text would come through from Julia, a photo of her kids, a simple "hope you're doing well." Tyler sent me a Christmas card, just my name on it. No guilt, no subtext. Even Mom, once in a while, would send a message, thinking of you. And sometimes that was enough. Because I learned something important through all of this. Family isn't about obligation. It's not about blood, or debt, or keeping silent to keep the peace. Family, real family, is about respect. About showing up because you want to, not because you're trapped by guilt or expectation. It took losing everything I thought I had to finally see it. And in losing them, or at least the version of them I clung to, I found something better. I found myself. And I was finally home.